Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session on driving tax transformation, how Auto Club Group streamlined indirect tax with Vertex and Workday. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Scott Sunday with Vertex. I'll be your host and moderator today. Before we get started, just a bit of general housekeeping to review. First, everyone's audio has been muted to avoid background noise. On your presentation console, I'm just going to give you an overview of those buttons. There's a Q&A button you'll see which will allow you to submit questions. Feel free to post any questions here. We'll get to them during the Q&A portion as soon as we finish the presentation. Feel free to browse the resource list, which contains additional info about Vertex, Deloitte, and Workday. You can use the emoji button to share your reactions with us during the discussion. You'll see a tile on your screen for our upcoming Vertex Exchange Conference from October 26th to the 30th to the 29th in Austin, Texas. Click the link to register, join Vertex customers, solution experts, and tax professionals for our annual flagship event. You'll see two buttons for Vertex and Workday and Request Vertex Demo. So for anyone interested in additional information or speaking with Vertex sales, just click either of those links, follow the on-screen instructions. After the webinar, we're going to have a short survey appear on the screen. We'll be offering a $50 gift certificate to one lucky survey respondent, so please share your feedback about today's presentation. A link to access the recording of today's session will be available in coming days and emailed to everyone that registered. All right, so today's session is accredited for one CPE credit. Vertex is registered with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy as a sponsor of CPE on the National Registry of CPE Sponsors. To obtain the credit, you have to remain on the webinar for a minimum of 50 minutes and answer all three polls. The polls will appear throughout the presentation, so just make sure to submit your answers by clicking on the response options displayed on your screen. And you'll see an Apple CPE icon on your attendee console. So for those interested in the CPE, after you've completed the CPE requirements, click the Apple icon on the console. From there, you'll be able to print and view your certificate. Okay, so I'm pleased to welcome our panelists today. We have Jim Sullivan, Tax Managing Director from Deloitte. We have Jason Lockwood, Assistant Vice President from the Auto Club Group. Christy Paisley, Senior Financial Tax Consultant, Auto Club Group. And Mark Bowman, Solution Engineer from Vertex. Panels, thank you guys so much for being here today. All right, so before we jump into the discussion, just going to share a quick bit about some of our respective companies. Vertex, as you know, one of the most trusted providers of comprehensive integrated tax technology solutions. For over 40 years, we've helped companies conquer tax complexity. Vertex serves over 4,000 customers worldwide, including 60% of the Fortune 500, and we support more than 20,000 global tax jurisdictions. Jim, over to you for the Deloitte slide.
Thank you, Scott. Deloitte, also a trusted advisor around all things tax and technology. And that's where we come in to play with Vertex and with all of our clients, is to bridge that gap between technology and what a customer requires, especially around the tax area. So in any country, we have professionals to help you out. And back to you, Scott.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, just a quick bit about Workday, Workday Financial Management. So Vertex has a strong integration with Workday. There's over 1,700 Workday Financial Management customers, countries all over the world, over 130 countries, 55 local configurations, and 15 languages. So a lot of really exciting stuff with Workday and our integrations with Vertex and with Deloitte. Okay, so let's get going. Let's get into the discussion. So we're ready for our first panel question. So what were the primary indirect tax challenges that Auto Club Group faced before implementing Vertex with Deloitte? And what made this the right time to pursue transformation?
Great, I can take this, Scott. So as a member of the ACG tax team, And anyone who works in sales and use tax, there are many challenges with indirect taxes. They're very transactional. One of the challenges that was very difficult for us was we were always monitoring tax rate changes, taxability changes of all the commodities we were purchasing, as well as what we were selling. And so we were spending a lot of time doing that research instead of the analysis we could have been doing. So with Vertex now, that's all handled for us. So we can spend more time on analysis. And for us, this was the perfect time to pursue the transformation because we were switching from PeopleSoft to Workday, and our use tax calculations and rates were always housed within PeopleSoft. So we knew we needed a new system. And so we looked around, and Vertex was the right fit for us.
That's great, Christy. Yeah, it sounds like it was really opportune time, and I know that ERP transformation is a big task. So it sounds like this all happened just at the right time.
Definitely.
Okay, so this leads us into our second question. Oh, wait, sorry. We have a first poll. My fault. We have a poll for the audience. I'm going to back up. So for the audience, since we're doing CPE, like I said, we're going to do a couple polls. Wanted to get your reactions before we do our second question from the panelists. What's your biggest indirect tax pain point? Wanted to get this to help guide our discussion today. So is it maybe bad data, incorrect tax calc? We hear that quite a bit. A lot of people struggling with audits. Maybe it's returns and filing. Shortage of professionals. We hear that a lot. A lot less tax talent coming up. Maybe VAT compliance or e-invoicing, or maybe it's something else. So go ahead and select your responses. Go ahead and put those in. We'll take a look, see what everyone is struggling with, and then we'll keep moving here. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see what everyone thinks. Your biggest indirect tax pain point. Wow. It's like bad data, incorrect tax calc.
Not surprised, Scott. Not surprised. Bad data, it's just a pain, right? Corporations, organizations that are not for profit, everyone is challenged with having the right information on the right transaction. And we're all human. And even when something is automated, you don't necessarily get the same value on the same transaction every time for a variety of reasons. So not surprising here.
Yeah, and Jim, when you think about it, during the implementation of like a tax engine, one of the biggest exercises, obviously identifying those elements that are needed for tax calculation or reporting and compliance purposes. And that's a large part of what your team does.
Yes, absolutely. And it's as you'll hear later on, it's a large part of what went on in this project as well. And not surprisingly, if we look at the second largest piece here around audits, because the bad data is the first, dealing with an audit, proving that the transactions were calculated correctly, or dealing with the fact that it wasn't calculated, I'm not surprised that this came in as second.
Yep. Great analysis, and thanks to the audience for sharing this info with us. Okay, so now let's get going into our second question for our panelists. So back to the Auto Club group, how did you guys align the necessary stakeholders, like for example, tax, IT, and finance, to build the effective business case to have an automated indirect tax solution? Jason, would you be able to take us off on this one?
Yeah, so for ACG, this wasn't too difficult of a situation of getting alignment. So finance came to the organization. They really wanted a transformational activity, wanted a new system. So the use it through the PMO, through IT, and through finance, we all kind of aligned on what our overall goals would be for the transformation. We knew that financials would be kind of a no-brainer for us. That's what we had to replace. And then we looked around and said, what are some other pain points we have? Tax quickly came to kind of the top of the list of a pain point that we had. And so we knew that going forward, our strategy was going to get something that was fully integrated and that would free up our people to do more of the strategic things, as Christy mentioned. So getting the manual off, getting more automation, and depending really on a service provider like Vertex that is standing out in their field providing tax was really a no-brainer for us to move forward with Vertex, and get that integration and that alignment was really pretty easy for us.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jason. Sorry. Anything else to add on this one, Jim or Jason or Christy, or looking good?
No, I agree with Jason. It was, it was just getting the right people, getting the finance, the tax, and IT together, right at the table to start talking about what we wanted and what we needed, with this transformation. And so we were lucky that our IT team and the project was willing to look into this for us and work with us to get this started. So
excellent.
And Scott, I think this is. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, sorry. I'll just say I'll add on. I'll echo what Jason and Christy said, but I'll add on a little bit. Their culture at ACG, I think, lent itself to this alignment of necessary stakeholders and basically subscribing to a same vision. That was very important. A lot of organizations don't have that type of culture. They strive for it, but they don't necessarily have it when it comes to practice. And so you end up with essentially decisions around ERP or finance transformation type projects being rather heavy-handed in one area. Either it's solely finance, or not solely, but majority finance, or majority IT, or majority something else. And so what happens is tax doesn't necessarily get in on an equal footing in terms of aligning stakeholders and saying, look, this is a necessary component of your processes. And so we need to be involved, and we need to have, some activities done to meet the tax requirements in order to help you, procurement, as an example, in your process and make your process more efficient. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, no, and I think this is for people in our audience. If you ever do want to do a project around tax transformation, these are the types of parties that are probably going to be part of the discussion, part of the overall project. So it's best to engage them and at least maybe even do that pre-work before engaging vendors. Because, again, a lot of times we have people that are in the tax group that talk to us only to find out that their IT team or their finance team doesn't have the budget for it. So they've spent all this time talking to a vendor, laying things out, getting all excited, only to be let down and say, oh, this is a next year thing, or not, something that we can't focus on because we don't have the IT resources. Conversely, we have people in the IT group that come to us and say, we need a tax engine. They don't give us very good requirements. So they're just going based on maybe the lowest cost option out in the field. And then the tax folks are left with a solution that's maybe not fit for their purpose or is not adequate with the requirements, doesn't have the integrations. So again, when you have more parties engaged, obviously the success rate is a lot higher when we talk about, getting a project over the line, getting it implemented successfully, getting the right partners involved. It really, takes a village to get it done, not to scare people, but obviously, like I said, to make it successful from the get-go.
That's great feedback, Jason, Jim, Mark. Really good stuff. Okay, let's go into our next question. So let's talk about the integration process. Jim, I was hoping you could take this one and help walk us through the integration process between Vertex and Workday. What were some of those milestones and key lessons that you learned?
Yeah, no, happy to do that. So the first thing that we did, and this was probably the most important, was we just talked about aligning stakeholders. Once you've aligned the stakeholders and you made your business case and you have the project as a go, you want to align everyone, all the necessary groups on the project and so forth, to the various activities. And it starts off with essentially a roles and responsibility matrix, sometimes known as a RACI matrix. And that really was a key part here. Communicating, these are the major steps that need to be done. This is who needs to be involved and at what levels do they need to be involved. And the reason that is so important is because whether you're at the beginning of a project and you're getting involved, or you're coming in once the project has already been kicked off, that communication is necessary so that people can see, oh, I'm, as an example, in Workday, I'm defining the FDM, and I'm in the middle of doing data conversion for what my spend categories are going to be. Well, tax has now come in and said, okay, we need to be involved in this, And you need to know that up front, or at least as soon as possible, so that you can then say, okay, well, if I've already done a couple of steps in this data conversion, I need to get tax involved for their input, for their advice and guidance on what that conversion rule needs to be, as an example. So that was really the kind of the core here. And that's something that we set up on this project really nicely between Vertex, all of the ACG groups, and Deloitte, is that responsibility matrix. And then that walked us everything through design to build and configure, to doing the unit testings, to doing the data conversions, to doing the integration testings, and then ultimately going live and then doing hypercare support afterwards. Jason, I know you have some comments around the integration process.
Yeah. So the integration process is, for us, more of a downstream process. So as you said, Jim, you're absolutely right. We need to get the foundation laid. We need to have a total understanding of the requirements, the FDM, the other components. We got a little bit lucky in our implementation, and the tax was a very eager participant. And so there were times that we had to say, kind of step back and say, we're not quite ready for the tax group, but please stay involved. And thankfully they did. Been involved in some past implementations where the tax group or others kind of go away and then expect to be re-engaged. But thankfully with Christy and her team, they were involved right from the beginning. And we get to bring both tax and our IT group for the integrations. And they got to hear the planning of our system, the requirements of our system. So when it was time for the tax team to give their requirements and understand how the system was set up and how we can best take advantage of the data elements of the spend categories or what have you, they were right there ready to jump in and run with us. So it really was, don't want to make it sound too much like a honeymoon of a project, because every project has their challenges and we certainly had ours, but it really was that team effort, both from the tax and the IT side, that allowed us to be so successful.
Thanks, Jason.
I'll relate it.
I definitely agree with that, Jason. And from the tax side, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, I totally agree with what Jason said. You know, having the tax team in early for us helps so much, because when your procurement team or your other teams are setting up those spend categories for the use tax they're not doing it for use tax calculations, right? They're doing it for their purchases. And so you want to make sure that you're in at the beginning and you're looking at those spend categories and making sure that you are able to accurately for tax calculations. And if you want to, you know, discuss if they set up different spend categories and you want to work with them and talk through what their thoughts are on why they're doing it and what they're actually purchasing with those spend categories, it's correct. So it was great that we were able to be in at the beginning of the project.
Yeah, and then relating it to people in the audience, I mean, really, when you're, again, talking about a tax automation project through your different systems that you have, obviously that RACI model that Jim referred to is super important, you know, and again, knowing what your team is going to be doing, knowing who your partner who's doing the implementation is doing, knowing any other key stakeholders and their roles, because again, many people don't realize how many different moving pieces there are and different groups that are involved. So it's great to get that up front when you're doing your evaluation to understand who is going to be doing what, or making those negotiations up front for your partner to do more, or for your team to do more, or where you believe like, hey, I think this should be more of a 50-50. That is a great time to really lay out what you envision I'll just say level of effort is going to be between your team and whoever else is involved in the project.
That's great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Jason, Christy, and Jim for all the color on this question. Really informative stuff. Okay, let's go into our next discussion question. So in terms of collaboration, how did the collaboration between Auto Club Group, Vertex, Deloitte, how did that help address issues like inaccurate tax reporting, vendor charge, tax validation? Mark, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like with every prospect or any customer that engages Vertex with this type of project, there is kind of a modus operandi that we go through to actually go through every opportunity. And the first thing is engaging and understanding a customer's business requirements and business processes. So when we're talking about, okay, here we're talking about Workday, here we're talking about ACG. Their focus was on consumer use tax. So again, you're just looking at the supplier invoice side. So we obviously started talking about our capabilities there. Obviously, the studio integration that we have, kind of out of the box, so to speak, obviously tailored to specific needs of ACG. But then really during demonstration and more discussion, really showcasing what those capabilities are with that studio integration. So in this case, saying, what do you want to do when your vendor doesn't charge you tax? What do you want to do if they don't charge enough tax? What happens if they overcharge you? Working out some of those things early on to understand what their requirements were, what we can handle natively with the integration, and then things that we're going to have to configure during the implementation. To like Jim's point, are we going to be just looking at procurement categories? Are we going to be looking at just the items? Are we going to be tying it in with GL account codes or vendor SKUs? These are some of the activities that we sometimes identify up front to then lay it out better for the team that's implementing to really understand what are all the things that are necessary to make a project successful and obviously have better experiences during that first phase of user acceptance testing.
I definitely agree with that. And between the training that we received from Vertex and I don't want to say the hand holding, but basically it was from Deloitte, right? Like they know all of the best practices. Jim's team was able to walk us through when we had exceptions that we wanted to, different mappings and different things that we needed for our business cases. And the teamwork we're still working with them now. We just went live in July. So we're still working with them, just making sure that we know, everything that we can do with the system, because there is so much with Vertex that we can be utilizing. And the partnership has just been great.
I appreciate that, Christy. And likewise, Christy and her team, they did not sit back, and you heard this from Jason before, they didn't sit back and take a passive approach to this project or being involved in the project. They took an active approach, and that was a bit challenging. They still had to do their day jobs, right? They're still responsible for all the tax compliance, making sure that things are being addressed appropriately, helping out operations as on a day-by-day basis while doing this project. And it took additional effort to be part of the project, to be engaged with the other teams, to make decisions about what was a higher priority to spend time on versus a lesser priority. But their knowledge about how their organization runs was absolutely key. Vertex and Deloitte alone, without them in collaboration, would not have been as effective on this project. And so really it took all three groups, right? It takes the organization, it takes a subject matter expert like Deloitte in tax and processes, and it takes a technology expert like Vertex to come together to do this on this particular Workday project. And what I've seen in other engagements, any project.
Jim, what's our favorite question that we usually get? How long is this going to take, right? Everybody asks that
Yes.
during, and again, and that's the thing. I mean, Jim really said it best. I mean, we always say, hey, this could be really fast if everybody is pencils down, computers closed, heads down working on this. But to Jim's point, everybody's got day jobs, and Christy and, Jason, if you want to say, how much you really thought this was going to take versus what it did, I don't know if that would give some people a clue, because again, we hear a lot of customers come to us, hey, can I get this done by the end of the month? And it's like, well, sometimes just signing the paperwork is going to take your legal team to get to the end of the month.
Fair.
Exactly. No, for us, it was a little more than we anticipated, but we have a very small tax team, right? And so we had 2 people, and it was not our main focus, right? We are the income tax staff. We are the sales and use tax staff, right? We have multiple hats, obviously, if you have a small tax department. So at certain times, right, this is not top priority, but it has to be to keep it going. So we definitely put a few more hours in than we expected, but the end product made it all worthwhile, because now, we're spending less time, like I said, on many of the things that we used to have to do. So.
Yeah, that's great, Christy. The other thing I will bring up that's really great when you have a partner like Deloitte here is, again, Vertex, since we're a software vendor, we can't give tax advice, especially when it comes to the mapping of, your different tax drivers to the Vertex categories to determine the taxability of products and services. But a partner like Deloitte has those advisory services to actually dovetail into that project. So again, if you need that little extra help that's outside, I'll just say, the normal scope of just implementing a software, that's where that advisory can really come into play and make sure that you're not having to spend time outside of just implementation to now engage somebody that can give you those advisory type results, or I'll just say questions answered.
Definitely, and we definitely used that, right? And worked with them on, like I said before, best practices, right? So it was definitely worthwhile to work with them on this project.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's really great to see all of this collaboration that was able to support this project. And like Jim had said before, the culture of collaborating and being able to work together is really important to understand. So, okay, let's get into our next poll question. For those who are looking to get the CPE credit, don't forget to submit your responses to this. So, as we talk about collaboration and ERP transformation, wanted to get everyone's thoughts on what is your current involvement in ERP related projects. Would you say you're involved in the planning phase before implementation? Maybe during any ERP implementation, actively working or supporting or optimizing a completed ERP rollout, or maybe you're not involved with any ERP projects. So please go ahead, put your responses in, and we'll take a look, see what everyone thinks. See the answers coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds.
Scott, the interesting thing is from a trend perspective, since even during COVID, but definitely after COVID, we Deloitte have seen a tremendous uptick in the number of finance transformations and general upgrades to ERP and ancillary systems going on. Of course, upgrades happen on a periodic basis, but there just seems to be more than what we've normally encountered before COVID. And so it's interesting to see that I think people are recognizing that when COVID happened, that was a major disruption to business. They maybe didn't have everything that they needed. So a lot of people scrambled at that time and then said to themselves also, once we're out of this period, we need to take steps. So if something like this happens again, we can be more prepared.
Yes, for sure, Jim. Yeah, we see that too on this end at Vertex with ERP involvement. So I think you make a great point.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Jim, that you brought up that, with COVID, everybody went from, in-person brick and mortar to more online and remote and cloud. And everybody got finally comfortable, like, hey, the cloud can handle business functions reliably, and again, we've only seen it scale from there. So here we thought everybody was moving to the cloud before. COVID was the true test of, can this handle high outputs or volumes, or just, can it handle those business processes that are critical? And it passed the test, thankfully, for most people with flying colors. And now we do see the Oracles, the SAPs getting those requests of, hey, I want to now start moving this on-prem behemoth that I have sitting on my servers and that I'm having to maintain and pushing them to the cloud.
100%. Yes, thank you, Mark. Yep. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see what the audience thinks about this question. So here comes the result. Wow. Interesting. Okay.
That's good. That's good. It means that people are being more involved in systems even beforehand, right? The planning phase, or actively. So that's great. You never want to see a high number in that very last one.
No, no, that would be troubling for sure. And it's kind of right on par, Jim, with what you and Mark were just talking about, how COVID kind of drove more people to the cloud successfully. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get into the next question. Okay, so what measurable improvements has Auto Club Group seen since going live, whether it's in compliance, efficiency, or transparency? This is kind of a two-part question, so let's just get into the first part. I guess Christy and Jason, could you guys start us off on this one?
I can definitely start us off. So because we decided right now to just start with the use tax side and not move to the sales tax side, we have not yet seen any improvements in compliance because we are still doing compliance outside of Vertex at this time. But I am very hopeful that that will be moving. Soon we'll be moving to adding compliance, adding sales. Now, the efficiency and transparency, though, we've definitely seen improvements. The efficiency, not having to do all the work I mentioned earlier, right? All that that manual, input, all of that work that we don't have to do anymore. That's all gone. It's all behind the scenes. And the transparency, the reports we're getting out of Vertex, the reports we get out of Workday, we can see it's so much easier than what we had before. We can see where the vendors are charging us sales tax versus where we're accruing use tax, and validating that sales tax that they're charging us is correct based on the calculations within Vertex. Or if they're not charging us sales tax, we have that ability to reach out to a vendor and determine why. So we've had a lot more time to do analysis, and so we're excited to look forward and to use Vertex for more projects in the very near future, I'm hoping. And I'll let Jason jump in to kind of talk about where we're looking ahead.
Yeah, so I'll jump into the next question of how we're planning the transformation. So we very purposely laid out our transformation effort to be system first. So moving from legacy systems, we looked and said, okay, how can we replace the legacy systems almost apples for apples, right? We didn't try to take on too much from a people and process perspective. Now that we're live, we have the plan to mature the solution for the next 6 months or so, and then we plan to tackle the people in the process. So a number of the different processes that we just kind of lifted and shifted from our legacy system into Workday, we plan to come back around and say, okay, where can we effectively use Workday? Where can we effectively use Vertex and the integrations? And where can we really take advantage of that people and process, right? So we knew going in, we wouldn't know what we don't know is kind of the classic, the saying there. And so we're looking to have that second part of the transformational effort of people and process are going to very purposely follow once we understand our tools. And then, as Christy mentioned, we picked the vendor and we evaluated our vendor at Vertex to replace the use tax functionality, knowing that we're going to have a sales tax component that's going to follow on. So right now, we being a AAA, as you are probably all familiar with, or hopefully all familiar with, and have AAA membership in case you all break down on the side of the road, part of our mantra is really making sure our members are safe, right? And so we offer battery sales and some other commodity related sales, and that's going to be our next kind of how we take advantage of Vertex is integrating those new sales and utilizing sales tax component of Vertex. Now that we got the foundation laid, knowing that we have the Workday integration, we have that proven partnership, we have that knowledge base built, and then gradually incorporate and integrate iteratively the usage of Vertex into more and more parts of our organization. So though it was tactical at first, we went into it a little bit more strategic, knowing that once we get that kind of replacement of our old functionality, once we understood the tool set, then we'll look to iterate both from a people process perspective, but also a usage perspective, and in terms of sales tax going forward.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in here. Again, with other organizations, we see the same thing that Chrissy had spoken about. Again, trying to take more of the decision making out of people's, those front end people's hands. You don't want your AP clerk making taxing decisions. You don't want people just guessing or having to, look up rates as those vendor bills are coming in, or having to look up in a taxability matrix. Hey, are paperclips taxable, or is this laptop going into production, or where am I using this particular item? You want to have all that stuff configured so people are just actually getting that information into the system. It gets taxed appropriately. You do get the compliance, the efficiency right off the bat. And again, when we're talking about, what the future looks like, we're using AI to start doing these types of things. Today, I'll just say Vertex is in phase 1 of AI, where we're actually just, saying, a little bit better of telling you how to use help or categorizing your products and services better. But our next generation of AI, and again, this is where our development teams are kind of working with other organizations, because you hear it from Salesforce. Benioff talks about, the agents that they've got running all over the place. I know through Workday Rising that just happened, Workday was really, going through about, where they're going to start infusing more of those AI capabilities. Well, Vertex is working with those types of partners, obviously, to do more of that agentic AI, where we're actually doing agent-to-agent talking. For example, I just added a new product in Salesforce. The Salesforce agent can reach out and say, well, you know what? What does that mean when I add a new product? What is the taxability of that product when I add it? It talks to the Vertex tax engine, who then obviously maps that product by, its description, its information to our category, so that no first person actually has to go in and do that manually. So again, these are the types of, I'll just say, innovations that our team is working with all of these other different systems and our different partners to make sure that we can now start taking advantage of those AI capabilities. And yes, Jason, I will say a lot of us here at Vertex say we're on the same team, because being a AAA member and insurance purchaser, we appreciate your services. Hopefully it's just as much as you appreciate ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to take Mark's comments a bit further, yeah, it is absolutely one where we are seeing a lot of AI being embedded in everything, right? Standalone processes, as Mark was saying, right? The connection between Salesforce to Vertex and then to Workday and so forth, and that's part of something that we're involved in as well, with both client and vendor partners like Vertex and so forth, and Workday, is building that. So as an example, when Salesforce makes a call out to Vertex and says how to map it, if it runs into a problem or it does not match up with a confidence level that it needs to, it then reaches out to, say, Christy, as an example, and says, Christy, we have some questions here. Can you tell us, is this particular service or this particular product, say the batteries outside, is it a service or is it a good, or is it both? And there's a component to each. And so Christy can then say, yes, there's a component to each. The battery is a tangible product, but the service goes along with it, but it's a nominal fee. So therefore treat it in this manner. And then it will know to go back to Vertex and handle that. That is the upcoming, you're seeing it now, but it will be more and more prevalent in the future.
Got it. That's great, Jim. Thank you so much, and Mark, for everyone on comments on this question. So great job. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our next question. So what advice would you give to other organizations considering tax automation or evaluating the use of external automation implementation partners? Can you share any tips or suggestions on building an effective business case for tax automation? Jason, would you be able to get us started on this one?
Yeah, and hopefully as we're going through this, we've kind of seen a theme, right? And that theme is partnership. Really, that has been our key, and I think is the key to moving forward with transformational activities, is making sure we have a partnership. That partnership, as you have heard, is with Deloitte, Vertex, and ACG, and really setting that tone up front that we're going to be partners through this. It's much more than a transactional relationship, right? So I think having that partnership and setting that tone up front is vitally important. The other part is collaboration. So as we went through, and I'll say that we started with partnership first between ACG and Deloitte, and understanding, what are our needs, and making sure Deloitte understood our needs, making sure Deloitte was there with us, kind of rowing in the same direction to move us forward. Then we moved on to the collaboration. And that's where you've heard the theme of finance was involved, tax was involved, IT was involved, PMO was involved as we moved forward and did the evaluations, right? So we didn't send tax out and say, you guys go and evaluate your tool and come back. We all sat in the meetings and we all heard the same things. We could all critically do some analysis to say where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, where do we want to move forward, where does it fit for us? And in addition to that, my biggest advice would be collaboration outside of the project. So we went to Vertex and we went to Deloitte and said, we want some customer references before we move forward. And I will say that it's our conversation and taking that time to deal or to talk with the customer references and to dig in to say, what are your challenges? What are your strengths? What are the weaknesses of what you've all have encountered as you've gone through the journey before us, right? And ask those verifying questions. That's really what landed us on Vertex is the customer interviews that we did from what Vertex gave us or other customers or other vendors gave us as we evaluated the products. And I know that we have Exchange coming up. I really wholeheartedly want to emphasize if you're considering a tax software, go to Exchange, right? Get connected with those customers that are in all stages of the implementation, that are in the planning stage, right? And collaborate with them and ask what questions you've had. Get with customers that are in the middle of the implementation stage, right? And that are in the midst of it and find out what their challenges are, what have they overcome, and then get with those customers that have seen the light, right? Have gone live or have been on the product for a year or so and really form those business relationships with those different customers out there because really we can work and grow as a community. And I would say, again, circling back around with the partnership, it was vitally important for us with Deloitte and Vertex, and then that collaboration, whether it's internal, external, or collaboration even within the vendors, right? Really, when we come to it, we can move past and get through any challenges we have from a technical standpoint if we have everybody to the table, everybody committed to the same goals within the same timelines. And we found we had a number of different challenges as we moved things forward, not just with tax implementation, but with other parts of the project. And we found that if we can fall back to that partnership, fall back on that collaboration, and not focus on that transactional relationship that maybe some people have sometimes with their partners, that we can move things forward. And that really was our success. I don't want, we kind of talked about how successful it was and, how it was really a kind of a honeymoon. The reality was we had a number of different challenges, but it ended up being that great partnership and having that success because we had everybody with their hands in the middle. We all knew the kind of the goal we were going for. The other part of this was the business case. For us, it was a no-brainer from a business case standpoint because we're moving from such a manual process really to an automated process. IT, having everybody collaboratively there, nobody questioned the business case, right? So nobody was really digging in on the business case saying, are you sure about that ROI? Are you sure about this? Are you sure about that? We all had that understanding of going from manual to more of an automated integration, going with a tax vendor like Vertex that's been around in the industry, very mature. I can remember working with Vertex decades ago, right? So going through that partnership and that trusted partnership with a company like Vertex and with Deloitte really gave us that confidence to move forward. And it wasn't that, again, back to transactional. It wasn't a transactional CBA that we had to build for this. It was more of a strategic CBA we built, and it was really a no-brainer in the end. So maybe taking a little bit of an approach where it doesn't have to be transactional and bringing everybody together to ensure that we all have a common goal and common time that we want to get to it and a common achievable milestones out of it is really what enabled us to be successful.
Yeah, Jason brings up great points. Again, we talk about those partnerships, but in terms of a time frame, again, here at Vertex, we always like to say, try to get tax involved up front if you can on any of these projects. Again, I know a lot of times we have a lot of IT people that approach us, just talking about, hey, I need to solve for tax. the more we can get tax people involved and their requirements satisfied, obviously it's going to come with a better outcome, especially when you get to your go live. And again, this is where we really, work with companies to understand timelines. What are your terms of success? What is those ROI factors that your organization is looking for? Obviously, we talk about, penalties and interest if you don't get the tax right, but how long is it taking that AP clerk to make that determination? How long is it taking your team to research all the rates, to put in that table that you have maintained? How long is it taking, your IT group to, maintain these different tools or different programs that you might have, that when you have a tax automation project to, replace all of that, it really makes sure that we're ticking all of those boxes, making sure that we cover all of those ROI categories that you've identified up front. But again, the sooner we can do that and the sooner that you have all of those things identified, by the time you do go live, hopefully you have, 100% or darn near close to those, checked off by the time your team goes live. And thank you, Jason, for plugging Exchange. I don't have to do it for next month in Austin. But again, please engage our team if you are there or plan to go. Again, we've got customers there, we've got prospects there, and we do have a lot of Vertex staff to really answer those questions around any of this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's one of those things where when the engagement is key. And for those of you in the audience that might be thinking, "Wow, I wish I had that." You can have that. You can have that level of engagement. And if you find that you've encountered a roadblock or maybe something less, a speed bump, in terms of getting that collaboration and understanding, start with understanding your stakeholders. So for example, most of these projects and stuff are not kicked off by, the tax department. They're kicked off by the chief information officer or the chief financial officer or the chief executive officer and so forth, or a combination of those. Find out what their key concerns are. What is their performance metrics? What do they want to achieve? And then build in that awareness of what tax and an automated tax solution can do for them on those attributes. If they want to be more efficient and have everybody, be able to do 110% of their job and not waste time with administrative stuff, focus on that. You can help that out through your tax processes being automated, and not just tax people, right? You heard it from Christy and Jason before, but you can have the AP people be more efficient. You can have the general ledger accountants be more efficient. You can have the sales people be more efficient. And as to what Jason was saying with the sales side, you can have the service representatives be more efficient, right? It's all of those types of things that factor in. In addition to that, if someone says to you, it's all about cost for me. Okay, great. Tax is about cost and risk. And so you can then clearly show them, if you have this automation, if you have this alignment, if you have this collaboration and cooperation with groups, you can do these things, and that you're willing to, to come to the project, to come to the activity and be invested in it. And that will help you. Now, do this as far in advance as you possibly can. If you don't find out about the project until it's already started, it's still important to do these steps, but you're just going to have to do them a little quicker, a little bit in a shorter timeline. But start now. We saw that there was probably about 16% or so not engaged in a project. Okay, those 16%, start doing this awareness now, because if you do this, it will help you be involved. It will help your organization be able to tackle these items without giving up, without basically not being involved, and then essentially presenting more risk for the organization because you're not involved in the project.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Jason and Mark. Really amazing tips on this question here. Such valuable insight for the audience and folks that would be considering something similar. Okay, so we have one more poll question for the audience, and then we're going to hit our last discussion question. So here comes third and final poll. Talking about ERP implementation, which external department do you collaborate with most following your ERP implementation? Got a bunch of options here. Maybe it's tax, finance, could it be IT? Procurement, Christy spoke a lot about procurement earlier. Maybe it's legal, supply chain, or HR. Or if you don't collaborate much externally, just let us know about that too. So go ahead, everyone. Go ahead, please put your answers in. Definitely need these for the CPE, and we'll take a look at the responses in just a few more seconds here. External department. Okay, I see the answer.
It'll be interesting to see this result.
Yeah, Jim, any predictions before we hit the answers on what external departments would be the most collaborated with?
Based on just past history, and I am a tax person, but I was one in industry before going into public and doing consulting. I'm going to say that people are going to probably say A, because it's following the ERP implementation. So sometimes old habits die hard, right? They're probably going to be collaborating the most with themselves internally and so forth with the new reports and such. But I'm just hoping that it's going to that's not going to be the highest one.
Right. Well, let's take a look. Let's see. We got almost everyone's answers in. So thank you guys for putting your responses in. And here comes the reveal. Okay.
Oh, IT. All right.
Interesting.
And I'm wondering if that's maybe, and Christy might be feeling this at the moment, if that's more of the hypercare piece, right? The implementation has happened, and now we're collaborating more with IT to fix things.
Right, that's true. Because I was thinking procurement, right? Because I'm thinking on the use tax side, right? All of those invoices, all of those POs and requisitions, that's who we've been spending a lot of time with the training and just working with those teams. So, but IT makes sense.
Definitely.
It does.
Definitely.
It does.
Okay, so let's jump into our last discussion question. After this, we should hopefully have a few minutes for some Q&A with the audience. This is our last question for today for the panelists. Okay, so we talked a lot about involving tax stakeholders early as possible. If it's not possible to do that and get tax involved early, can you name some best practices to ensure success for downstream implementations? I'm not sure who wants to take this one first.
I can jump in.
Oh, go ahead, John.
All right. I'll keep it short, and then I'll turn it right over to you, Mark. So, First things first. Project's already kicked off. You found out about it a week to months afterwards. You're like, oh goodness, we'll never get involved. Now, what do? Prioritize. First things first. Prioritize, and find the key stakeholder that you need to work with. So, as an example, if this was this project. And it wasn't, but if it happened and procurement was the key piece, go to the procurement lead, talk to them directly and say, here are the key 1, 2, or 3 objectives I need to get done. Here's what I think needs to happen. What do you think? Build that relationship quickly. That's just a couple of conversations at most to kind of get that started and rolling. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say, even if you're not involved early, it's never too late. Again, tax can be inserted, obviously, the urgency might be a little bit greater, as you get closer to a go live. But obviously, even if you don't get tax in perfectly, the nice thing is, again, working with your partners, working with the different stakeholders, you can identify what's your MVP, your minimum viability success criteria to say, all right, tax isn't 100% there, but at least we've got something that we can still go live with, and then iteratively go through and say, okay, the next phase we're gonna concentrate on getting the categorizations better, or the next phase we're gonna really concentrate on the exemption certificate management piece, or the reporting. Again, I'll just say it's a never-ending project. There's no real end time because you can always make things better. You can always identify a new process or even identify a new product that you didn't license with Vertex. Again, we've got products for all different types of things. Again, we named exemption certificates, product categorization. If you go global with VAT, again, this is where you can, and I think Jason referred to this is where that partnership is. When you sit there and say, you know what, I'm not just here for what I just came to you for. I want to now engage you on other things that are bothering me or that are problems within my business. So again, it's just nurturing that relationship to make everybody successful in the end.
Jason, Christy, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm going to say prioritization. So I think everybody's kind of landed on prioritization, making sure that, whether from a tax department prioritization or from more of a project prioritization, don't try to do everything. Look at what those top priorities are to within the organization, count it successful, right? And there's always opportunity to improve. So I think just prioritize what you want to get out of the project, focus on that, and then develop those relationships.
Definitely. And make sure that relationship between you and procurement and accounts payable is working well, and it helps with the success. The more you can work together, it's definitely going to help be successful.
Excellent.
All right. Excellent job, panelists. Thank you, guys. Okay. So now let's go ahead and do a little Q&A with the audience. For those of you still with us, go ahead. If you have any questions, you can drop them into the Q&A box on your console. I see a few questions coming in for our panelists. So let's just jump right in. We have a couple minutes left. So question for the ACG team. What would you say are the top 3 risks or inefficiencies you saw in your manual indirect tax processes before you did this automation?
Sure. So I know I've already mentioned, right, the manual looking for tax rate changes. We were using different tax research tools, looking for those rate changes, looking for those taxability changes. There was the risk of missing something, right? We were getting daily emails where we might have missed it, or somebody might not have, made that change in our software because it was manual changes. So that was definitely a risk. Also, the tax team didn't own the use tax process. That was in the procurement area. So we were consulted, but we didn't own it. We now have taken ownership of it now that we've taken on Vertex. And so I feel more confident, now that we are spending more time analyzing and looking at those looking at the taxability and making sure everything is correct. Not that we had issues before, but now that we can see them, I feel like there's a lot less risk from what we had before.
That's great. Thank you, Christy. Very good. Okay, we have another question here. It looks like this would also be for the ACG team. When you were rolling out your new automated workflow, did ACG use any kinds of notable training or adoption tactics to help your staff, your users embrace this new automated workflow? Like anything that helped them adopt this?
So we're still working through that, right? We've been live for 2 months, but yes, Deloitte helped us a lot. They did a lot of training with us. Plus we used Vertex community and worked with the Vertex team. And so we've been training our tax team as well as our procurement team, the requisitioners, as they're purchasing items, and they might not know what the correct spend category is, right? So we have documentation and how we've been teaching them, the best practices, and most of that is actually coming from our partner of Deloitte, because we've had them along with us, for the last year, kind of like I said, holding our hand and walking us through this, because this was the first time that anyone on our team had ever done anything like this. So
yeah. Oh, thank you. And one of the key things too about training is we took a look at the training and broke them down by essentially personas or types. So people who would only get involved in making updates to master data, we purposely built some training for them to say, when you create something that you're going to purchase, the purchase organization is going to ask for this, and here are the key things that you need to do related to that for tax purposes, as an example. And so, it's taking that nuanced approach and prioritizing each type of learner to give them what they need. And so that was one aspect of it as well. And we did work with, we brought Vertex in. We used our knowledge and we used ACG's knowledge to make dedicated training for different groups in tax, in procurement, and in IT, so that people didn't feel left out, but they had a bit of personalization to it. All
right, that's great stuff. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Christy. So that's just about all we have time for today. I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping before we go ahead and wrap it up. So just as a reminder, anyone interested in obtaining CPE credit, go ahead and click that Apple icon on your resources tab. I just highlighted it, but you'll be able to print and view your certificates provided you met the credit. Like I said at the top of the hour, we're going to have a survey that appears on the screen as soon as we close this out. We're going to be doing a $50 gift card for one person who completes the survey. Just want to get your feedback. It helps us for future webinars. So please take a moment and do our survey. It takes about a minute. There's 5 questions on there. Last thing, anyone interested in further info on Vertex or how we can help you on the tax automation journey, we'd love to connect. Just click on either the Vertex and Workday or request demo buttons on your console, follow the instructions. One of our reps will be in touch. So that's about it. Thanks again for everyone's time attending today, and thanks to our panelists as well. We look forward to seeing you again at upcoming Vertex webinars. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.